Hello and welcome to the Food Connections podcast, the podcast that connects you with the food you eat. I'm Dr. Laura Wyness, a registered nutritionist and one of Scotland's regional food tourism ambassadors. I'm interested in all things related to food and nutrition, and I love learning more about the food we eat, how it's made, and getting to know the people involved in making our food. In this episode, I'm joined by Sonja Mitchell, founder of Jump Ship Brewing, based in Edinburgh. Sonja loves a beer, but hates a hangover. Sonja decided to jump ship from her career in marketing to set up Scotland's first brewing company dedicated to making world-class, non-alcoholic beers. Her love of the sea and sailing was the inspiration behind her nautical brand, Jump Ship Brewing, which she launched in December 2019. Having gained vast amounts of knowledge on brewing and learning from the many challenges faced in the past few years, Jump Ship Brewing is already award-winning. Sonja also has big ambitions for the future of Jump Ship Brewing. I was delighted to speak with her to find out more about how to brew a great tasting, non-alcoholic beer and learn what factors differentiate a good beer from an award-winning beer. I hope you enjoy listening. So hello and welcome to this episode of Food Connections. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Sonja Mitchell, founder of Jump Ship Brewing. How are you today, Sonja?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks so much for having me along.
That's okay. I'm really interested to hear more about your non-alcoholic beer, how it's made and what got you started making it. So do you want to maybe start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and your background and what led you to make beer?
So I've always loved beer. It's been my drink of choice as soon as I was allowed into a pub. And I played a lot of rugby in my teenage and 20s, and, rugby and beer go hand in hand. I've also always had bad hangovers. And I think I hit the point in my 30s where I had 3 young kids, a busy job, busy life, and just didn't really have time to wake up and waste a day with a fuzzy head and not feeling great. So I started looking at other options. I'd always discounted alcohol-free beer as being disgusting. I certainly didn't touch it when I was pregnant and not drinking. But my husband and I did Dry January in 2018, and we ordered a mixed selection of alcohol-free beers and drank our way through them. And a lot of them were disappointing, but I did find one that I quite liked and started drinking more of it, particularly on that sort of, Tuesday night when you fancy a beer midweek, but just don't want the fuzzy head. And it's brilliant. I was like, I can have a beer and I'm not worrying about the alcohol. But then I looked in my fridge at the alcoholic beers that I would normally drink, and I drink quite locally. I love all the brilliant breweries there are in Edinburgh and around. And yet here I was drinking a German lager just because I didn't want the alcohol. So I felt like I was being forced to make a different choice in order to avoid the alcohol. And that didn't feel right. And then I still can't quite explain it, but the idea took hold of me that, or maybe I could do this. Maybe I could brew an alcohol-free beer that was better than what was out there and that was brewed in Scotland. I don't have a background in brewing or the drinks industry. I did start life at Unilever, so I have worked in brands and marketing before. And as a marketing consultant, I've worked with some startup food and drinks businesses. So I think I'd taken some inspiration from some of my clients. And I just thought, well, there's many reasons why I shouldn't do this. My life is already far too busy, but I'll just do one step at a time, see how I go. So the first step was to see, well, can I develop a recipe for a beer that's better than what's out there already? So I did a startup brewing course to learn more about how you brew beer and how you'd set up a brewery, and totally loved it. Fell in love with the beauty and the craft of the brewing process. It's organic. You're dealing with live yeasts. It's unpredictable. It's really complicated, and there's a reason why it's a 4-year degree course at Heriot-Watt. So I realized I was going to need some help to do this. And while I was there, I met a brewer who had developed a low alcohol beer before, and he was willing to work with me to translate the beer I had in my head into a recipe on paper that we could brew with. So we brewed 3 different versions of a lager, and I wanted to start with a lager because I feel that lager's quite unloved, particularly in the craft sector, but it's what a lot of people like to drink, including me. So we did 3 different batches. One failed straight away. And then of the 2 that I shared with my friends, family, and some sort of independent bottle shops, there was one that was a standout winner. And everyone loved it. And I ran a few tasting sessions comparing it to what was on the market. And everyone was like, no, this is great. So I thought, right, I've got this really amazing beer that needs to be drunk. So I'm going to have to take the next step of getting this made commercially. And that was a really difficult, long process. I was very naive. I didn't know what I didn't know. So I set off looking to find a brewer in Scotland, a brewery that would be willing to work with me and scale my recipe. And after a lot of asking around, I found a brewery who were willing to have a crack. So I gave them my recipe and they're like, okay, yeah, we'll do it. And I thought it would just be as simple as scaling up and that would be fine. So I came back in a month before we were due to can the beer and I tasted it. And it tasted nothing like the beer that I was expecting to brew. And I think at that point I realized, okay, this is going to be a lot more difficult than I realized.
A bit more complex than you thought.
A bit more complex because, again, there are so many variables in brewing, the malts that you use, the water that you use, the temperature, the type of kit. And, each brewer is an individual as well in terms of how they do things. So I sometimes say it's a bit like, you've got a recipe for a 6-inch cake that you bake in your oven at home and you give that to, a different oven, different chef and a sort of 50 times bigger and the cake's not going to come out quite the same.
Yeah.
The upside of things going wrong is that I learned a lot more and I realized that what I was trying to do was very new, that no one had really done it before. And so it was really up to me to really get on top of every aspect of the process. Eventually, I had to move to a different brewery. And the first thing I knew that first time it wasn't going to work out because it was the first time brewing on different kit and it didn't work out, but it did taste right. So having cracked the flavor, then we brewed again and cracked the fermentation to make sure we hit below 0.5. And that's when we launched. So we launched in December 2019 with my flagship Yardarm lager. Mm-hmm. And then went straight into COVID. So that was another
great timing.
Yeah.
And that Yardarm lager, that's the one that has been award winning as well. So
yeah.
It's a good start.
Yeah, no, it was. It entered a few awards and generally it's one. And the big one for us was we won a couple of Scottish Beer Awards gold. And that was the first award I got in 2020. And that was a big one because, I wanted this to be a Scottish beer. So to be recognised by the Scottish brewing community was great. And then the following year, 2021, we won Best in the World at the World Beer Awards, which is quite a lengthy process. So all the beers are judged within their own countries, and then the winner from each country is then judged against the others from different countries around the world. So our Yardarm lager was judged against Stella Artois and Carlsberg and Athletic Brewing in the States, and we were the winner. So that was fantastic, and that got us some international recognition as well.
Wow, pretty impressive for your first lager.
Yeah, and I kind of thought, gosh, what the budget some of those big brewers have had in developing their beers, and the one I produced was judged better. So that was great because I kind of put it on the can. We want to brew world-class beer in Scotland. So that was really delivering on that.
Brilliant. No, it's great to hear. So I guess you've learned a lot from your experiences. Can you explain the process of making beer, first of all? And I suppose, is making alcohol-free beer much more challenging, would you say?
Yes. So alcoholic beer, you start with it's water, barley, yeast, and hops are the main ingredients. And everything you're doing in the brewing process is to produce an alcoholic beer. So it's about adding hot water to the barley in the mash, where you're extracting the flavors and the sugars. And then you add the yeast. So the yeast can ferment those sugars, turn them into alcohol, and then you add the hops, both for bittering and for aroma and for flavor. And there's a few different ways to brew alcohol-free beer. The macro beer is produced in big quantities. Quite often they'll brew an alcoholic beer and then they'll strip the alcohol out of it, normally through either heating the beer because the alcohol evaporates, or through pushing it through a membrane because the alcohol molecules are bigger, they get left behind. It's called reverse osmosis. Or some beers just aren't fermented at all, so they don't add yeast, and you maybe use some malt extracts and hop extracts and blend it and carbonate it almost in the same way you would a soft drink. But for me, I'm a little bit purist, and I kind of like the challenge of taking on the standard brewing process, but adapting it to brew a beer that is naturally less than 0.5. So everything we do about beer is designed to have fermentation. So we do add yeast because that is where a lot of the complex flavor transformation happens. You can really taste the difference between an unfermented and a fermented beer. but that only minimal fermentation happens. So that the alcohol we produce is just a trace. So we brew on normal brewing equipment. The way we sort of manage the process is the amount of malt that we put in at the start and the types of malt. So we're not reducing the amount of sugars available, the temperature of the mash as well, depending on how hot it is. It sort of affects the amount of complex simple sugars released. Then we use, for some of our beers, we use different yeasts which aren't so good at converting all the different sugars into alcohol. And then yeasts operate best at certain temperatures. So cooling it down quickly once we've hit the right fermentation. We've got a few different styles of beer now, and then they're all slightly different in how we do it. But that's the sort of the general rules that we follow.
For something that sounds so simple with just kind of 4 ingredients that you mentioned, the water, barley, yeast, hops, there's so many different factors that, could impact that kind of recipe and the outcome. So I can understand why it's so complex. And the no alcohol beer, that's any drink that's less than 0.5%.
If it's less than 0.5, it falls within the alcohol-free category.
Because the average alcohol content for a kind of standard beer is at about 4%, 4.4%. I read
something like that. Yeah. Because it can be quite confusing, this category, and it's quite a new category. And so there can be confusion, but you've still got alcohol in your beer. And I always use the example of a large ripe banana, which can be, 0.4% ABV. There's kind of naturally occurring alcohol in a lot of the things we consume, but not in enough quantity to have any physiological effects. Yeah.
And you mentioned you've got different lagers, different beers, ales, IPAs. Yeah. What's the difference?
You've got your lagers and ales. It's different types of yeast that ferment, top fermenting or bottom fermenting. And they have quite different flavour profiles. And lager generally needs to condition for longer at a cold temperature, which is basically lagering.
Okay.
You have pale ales, which generally lighter in colouring than darker ales. IPA is an interesting one because in an alcoholic IPA, you'd always expect to be stronger in alcohol than a pale ale. It's got quite an interesting story behind it. So it was when the British were sending beer out to India for the troops, the traditional pale ales weren't holding up so well. But they found if they added more hops and more alcohol, the beer was preserved better because both alcohol and hops are preservative. And then soldiers got quite used to drinking this kind of sort of stronger, more flavorful beer. And so for us as a non-alcoholic IPA, we're obviously not increasing the alcohol, but what we are doing is using more hops and using hops at different points in the process. So hops are brilliant. They're full of all sorts of quite complex flavor compounds, and they react quite differently to heat. So if you add hops in during the boil when sort of very hot, then you tend to get more of the bitterness and less of the aroma. So with our IPA, in addition to adding some at the end of the boil, we also have a dry hop. So once the beer is cooled down to maybe 14 degrees, we then add some hops. So it's not hot at that point. So you get less bitterness and more aroma. So more sort of whether it's tropical or citrus or pine, peaches, passion fruit, all those kind of flavors come through.
Wow.
And then we'll add, a few days later, add a few more hops. So the longer the hops sit in the beer, the different flavors you get as well. IPA is a dry hopped and a pale ale isn't.
Wow, it sounds like there's a lot of chemistry and science going into making beer.
A huge amount, yeah. A degree in chemistry or biochemistry really helps. My degree is history, by the way.
Very useful, I'm sure.
I'll tell you the story of the IPA first.
Yeah, I never realised the story behind of course, it's Indian Pale Ale, isn't it? But I never questioned where the Indian part came from or why that was. So yeah, thanks for clarifying that. So the hops, they sound wonderful, and I take it they provide some of the flavour. We don't grow hops in Scotland, do we? We do barley, but not the hops.
Yeah, so we have wonderful barley and really high quality malts produced in Scotland, but hops, it's just a bit too far north. So you might be successful growing a few in your garden, but not commercially. So in the UK, our main hop growing regions are Herefordshire and Kent. So the most recent beer that we've just released is a rye IPA, sort of amber style. And we've used all British hops from that, which is great because I went on a tour of a hop farm back in September, and I was really impressed by the skill and the focus on sustainability. And, we've got a great proud history of hop growing in Britain, and brewers like me need to buy those hops to make sure we've still got those farms here growing the hops. We also use hops North America, Europe, through Germany and Australia as well. So Galaxy hop, which we use in our Goose Wing IPA, is only grown in Australia, and it's a super hop. It's got incredible orange, passion fruit, stone fruit aromas, and also adds body and mouthfeel as well. I can't explain why, but it does.
I know something that hops and barley as well are good for is the polyphenols and all the kind of beneficial plant compounds, which are good for our health. And a non-alcoholic beer could potentially have these kind of nutritional benefits. I know they're quite good for B vitamins, folate and vitamin B12. So they're one of the few dietary sources of vitamin B12 for vegans or plant sources. Yeah,
definitely. And I think for me, I came into non-alcoholic beer because I wanted to avoid the alcohol. But actually, once you've taken out the alcohol, you're sort of unveiling a whole lot of other health benefits. It's actually, so a lot of the calories in beer come from the alcohol. So if it's non-alcoholic, you're looking at least a third of the calories of a normal beer, low in sugar, low in carbohydrates. But as you said, sort of with the additional benefits of B vitamins, and compared to sort of swapping out a sugary soft drink as well, it's a healthier choice.
And of course, it's fermented food or drink as well. So potentially some probiotics in there.
I think a lot of non-alcoholic beers, including ours, are pasteurized.
Oh, yeah.
It's something that we need to do because we've taken out the alcohol, which was the preservative.
Yeah. I think even if it's pasteurized, you do get some things called postbiotics now that they've discovered, which is, even though it's pasteurized, these postbiotics, which are the kind of byproducts of the fermentation, still are there and potentially still might have a benefit. It's like sourdough bread. It's been baked, so all the live bacteria are killed off, but there's still benefits. So yeah, there still might be a benefits there.
That's fantastic. I'd love to look more into that. That sounds fascinating. And a beer that helps your gut health, that's fantastic.
It's a fascinating area of nutrition research. There's so much we still don't know about it, but yeah, really interesting. So you mentioned there you've got lots of different types of beer. One I know that you've done recently that I've tasted is the rhubarb. Is it rhubarb and something or just
rhubarb and ginger? Yeah.
Rhubarb and ginger, yeah. So how did you come up with that flavour? How did you come up with new flavours for your beers and lagers?
So the rhubarb and ginger, we brewed it as a beer that would be particularly good to drink in summertime, warmer days. We were thinking about something that would be refreshing, so not too sweet, but had a bit of tartness to it. And I think that's where rhubarb came along, and also something that we could source locally as well. And we were brewing this in sort of May time, so rhubarb season, and ginger to bring a bit of warmth, because something that alcohol does, it gives a kind of a warmth on the palate, as does ginger. So we were sort of looking at whether adding ginger would give that kind of almost like trick you into thinking there's that kind of alcoholic warmth coming through. And also I love the combination of rhubarb and ginger. I always put crystallized ginger in my crumble.
A good combination.
Yeah, so we had literally 40 kilos of fresh rhubarb. We've had to wheelbarrow it into the brewery and stick it in big muslin bags and put that into the kettle. But a few people said, like, don't make a rhubarb beer, the flavour will never come through. So I'm really pleased. Until you brew it at scale, you never 100% know how it's going to turn out first time round. And really pleased with how that rhubarb taste came in. And the ginger is there as a background flavour, but I wasn't trying to create a ginger beer. Just as a kind of a complementary flavour. So yeah, it's very delicious, that one.
Yeah.
I have to think about whether we brew that again. I've got another fruity one lined up first that we're looking at doing for sort of spring this year.
Oh, brilliant. Look out for that. So what's the kind of things that you should be thinking of when you taste beer? A lot of the time I talk to my nutrition clients about mindful eating, but should we be mindfully drinking? And if so, what should we be thinking about when we drink beer or lager? What's the kind of tasting notes to look out for?
I think if it's your first time drinking a non-alcoholic beer, it's kind of understanding that alcohol is a flavour component. So while, the biggest compliment I think you can get is people drink our beer and don't realise it's non-alcoholic. Alcohol in itself is a taste, and that taste isn't going to be there. I mean, bitterness is a component of beer, and we all taste bitterness very differently. Some of us are more sensitive to it. So for some people, they really want a beer with a bitter finish. For some people, they don't. For me, I didn't want a beer that was overly sweet, and some non-alcoholic beers can be quite sweet. So when you're drinking a beer, you're experiencing bitterness. There's also the level of sweetness that you can get from the malts. With a darker sort of amber beer, you might get more of sweetness from crystal malts and those kind of malts. With a stout, really dark beer, you quite often have like roasted barley in there. So you're getting sort of roasty, toasty coffee flavors coming in. Always smell the beer before you drink it, like you would a wine or a whiskey. Give the glass a swirl, put your nose in, because the aroma is a lot of the flavor as well. And for an IPA or the hoppier beers, that's when you're really looking for a nice treat for your nose. I mean, hops can be sweet, spicy, floral, piney, vegetal almost. There's lots of different characteristics that come through there. And similarly, these follow through. The hops will reflect the flavor as well. For a lager, for me, it's kind of like a crispness that you're looking for as well, that refreshing palate that kind of just makes you want to have another drink quickly because it's so sort of quenching.
Yeah. And
then sour beers as well are increasingly popular, and they can follow a whole range of a little bit tart through to sort of lip puckering. Interesting growth area at the moment, sour beers. But gosh, then you can get onto a whole level of different styles. I mean, I came into this as someone who enjoyed beer, enjoyed the craft beers I was drinking, and wasn't particularly knowledgeable. But once you get into all the different types of European styles, yeah, there's tons out there to discover.
There's a lot to think about then when drinking a non-alcoholic beer, and I'll try that next time. Is that why it's becoming a bit more popular, or very popular? What's the kind of consumption trends? You must know the market more than I do, but it seems like it's becoming very popular in the last just couple of years.
Yeah, so I think the market retail sales grew 60% over the last 2 years.
Is that a particular group of people, or is there particular consumers that are opting for?
There's kind of people sort of coming into it two ways. There's people who are used to drinking alcoholic drinks and are now looking to cut back. So beer drinkers who, very much people like me, who want a beer but don't want the alcohol, and people who are still drinking but looking to moderate. And then there's also particularly the younger groups of 18 to 25 who just never drunk alcohol. And I think they're probably looking for slightly different things. So for me, I wanted a beer. So I'm looking for a really beery beer in terms of replacing what I would used to drink. I think if you've never drunk beer, you're not looking to replicate something, you're looking to discover something. So I think people are open to much wider flavor profiles, as kind of sweet or even spicy, but also not too sugary, and sort of filling the healthy criteria as well. Mm-hmm. There's definitely a way to go. If we compare the UK to Germany, say, or Spain, Spain's the largest in Europe, 13% of the market share is alcohol-free. I think our total volume in the UK is sitting around 4%. And we're still breaking down the barriers, because traditionally alcohol-free beer did taste disgusting. And for a long time, it was a category that wasn't given any love, that was just a dusty old bottle of lager that was still warm that they found at the back of the pub for you. It was only a couple of years ago that's where we were. I think there's a huge amount of growth still to come. And and a few people are still, I think on the hospitality side, working out how to serve it, where to put it on the menu. Can you serve it to someone who's under 18? The legislation actually isn't there. I think morally you'd say no, but there's kind of bits of that need to get sorted out as well. And the definitions in the category as well. So what's no and what is low? We don't really have a clear definition of low alcohol yet. I know that's something that the government is looking at as well.
And I suppose as they become more popular, it's definitely something that needs that clarification.
Yeah, but it's a really exciting place to be in, because what I love is that people who have decided to stop drinking or to cut back on drinking are really open to trying different things, because you're like, oh, well, I'm not drinking that. Well, what am I going to drink now? And I think so many people I speak to who kind of initially started their journey to moderation with a bit of trepidation. And I don't know, it's just so delightful and joyful to find these amazing drinks you can still have. So you're really not missing out. You're just switching out your ABV, not the beer.
Sounds good. So is the future bright, or what does the future hold for Jump Ship? What's your kind of ambitions?
Yeah, no, it's a really exciting time for us. Ever since I sort of first had the idea for Jump Ship, I wanted to have our own brewery. Up until now, we've been brewing on other breweries' equipment, which has been great. It's been good to work with different people, and it's got us to where we are now. But to really refine what we do, to really specialize and to really deliver on sustainability as well, we can want to have our own home. So I found the site just outside Edinburgh, and we're going live this week with a big crowdfunding drive to gain investment and to give away a share of our business to people who are as excited about alcohol-free beer as us and want to be part of the journey.
Brilliant. So I imagine this week is a very busy week for you.
Yes.
Very exciting week. Yeah. Well, that sounds like, great ambition. So it's just on the outskirts of Edinburgh, this potential brewery.
Yeah, so in Midlothian on a farm, and we've got access to biomass energy to help heat the brew house, because brewing is an energy intensive process, and it's tough for brews right now with the cost of energy being so high. So for us to be able to tap into sustainable energy source and also secure energy source as well is really exciting, and they'll be looking to add solar power into that in the next 12 months as well.
Brilliant. Well, for anyone that wants more information on that, I'll put the link, if you can share the link for that in the show notes, I'll add that in. So we're almost at the end, I suppose, but because it's a Food Connections podcast, I have to relate this back to food. What would you say is a good food pairing for one of your favourite beers that you make? Having
beers that pair well with food is really important to me, because I had some really disappointing early experiences of eating out with a beer that did not match my food at all, and it was just really disappointing. So each beer, I have different favours for every beer. The lager is great with pizza, with fish and chips. The stout is an interesting one because it's got some really smoky depth to it. So having it with chili or barbecue, it's just incredible. And chocolate cake as well.
Oh, nice. And have you got any kind of memory or kind of favourite food memory that you want to share?
I think one of my favourite memories, we were driving north with family for a holiday, and we stopped at Callander to get fish and chips. It's about 6:00 in the evening, and we sat down by the river. And as ever, I have my cooler of jump ship beers and just sitting there with like really awesome fish and chips, nice cold beer, watching the river go past. It was just a very peaceful, happy moment. And knowing I could still drive the rest of the journey.
Brilliant. Perfect picture there. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been absolutely fascinating hearing a bit more about how beer is made and non-alcoholic beer and all the kind of benefits and taste and elements. There's so much. It's such a complex thing. So I'll be definitely thinking about all the flavour profiles the next time I tuck into my non-alcoholic beer. So thank you for that. Thanks for your time. And
thank you so much.
Good luck with the crowdfunding.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye.
Thanks for listening to this Food Connections podcast. Do check out the show notes for some great links related to this episode. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you could give it a rating and leave a short review. And please do spread the word and tell others about it. If you have any comments or suggestions for future guests, do get in touch. Thanks again for listening, and see you next time.